Okay, this short video is going to cover a few useful epistemic notions. These are categories or distinctions that epistemologists have discovered that are extremely useful when thinking in daily life. So first is the notion of a credence. We've already talked about credences. These are degrees of belief. It's tempting to think, and we often talk as if beliefs are categorical, meaning they're all or none, meaning for any given proposition, either you believe it or you don't. But often, as a matter of fact, beliefs come in degrees. So, for example, I believe that my son is in the next room, but I'm not super confident about that. I've been in this room working for a few hours. I did see him there when I was last there, and I can still hear music playing from the other room, but perhaps he's gone somewhere else and just left the music playing. So I would say I'm like 70% confident that he's in the next room. By contrast, I'm 80% confident that he's somewhere or other in the house. It's really cold outside. It would be unlike him to go outside in the cold without letting anybody know. And I'm the person here whom he would let know. So my confidence that he's in the house somewhere or other is greater than my confidence that he's in the next room. Neither one is at 100%, but I'm fairly confident of both. So this is a credence. A credence is a measure of your confidence in a belief. And when you think about a credence, you can think about the probability you'd assign to a proposition that affirms that belief. Next up is the distinction between fallibilism and infallibilism. Infallibilism is the view that knowledge can't be fallible, meaning a belief counts as knowledge only if your justification provides certainty in the truth. That is, only if your justification is such that if you have that justification, you can't be wrong. That is, you're absolutely 100% sure that the belief is true. So the only case in which a belief constitutes knowledge, according to the infallibilist, is when you're absolutely certain that the belief is true. Remember, René Descartes advocated a view like that. He thought knowledge requires certainty. Fallibilism, in contrast, is just the view that knowledge doesn't require certainty, that a belief can count as knowledge even if it isn't certain. So I'll put these up here. Fallibilism says knowledge doesn't imply certainty, and infallibilism says it does. Recall that the vast majority of things we believe, like my belief that my son is in the next room or my belief that there's milk in the refrigerator, are believed on the basis of fallible reasons. That is, my reasons for believing he's in the next room or that there's milk in the refrigerator are imperfect. They don't guarantee the truth. They can't lead to certainty. So if infallibilism is true, then the vast majority of things that we believe don't really count as knowledge. Now, maybe we can still have better or worse reasons for believing them. Maybe we can even have good reason for believing them, but the reasons are never good enough for knowledge if infallibilism is true. Partly for that reason, most philosophers these days disagree with Descartes and think that fallibilism is true. They think that you can have knowledge without certainty. For our purposes, it doesn't really matter. You might remember from the discussion of Pollock and Cruz's take on the Gettier argument that they think justification is the central notion of epistemology, rather than knowledge being the central notion of epistemology. Correspondingly, even if infallibilism is true, it's not a big blow to epistemology because epistemologists will then just be studying justification, and justification can be fallible. That is, you can have good reason for a belief, even if that reason isn't good enough to guarantee the truth of the belief. Okay, the next notion is a defeater. A defeater is just something that should reduce your confidence in a claim. Sometimes people use the word defeater to mean something that's strong enough to undermine your belief in a claim, so you should no longer believe it once you encounter the defeater, but you can also just use the word defeater to indicate something that should reduce your confidence in a belief. So, for example, if I get evidence that goes, I think there's milk in the fridge, and then I ask my wife, is there milk in the fridge? And she says no, that's a defeater. It should reduce my confidence that there's milk in the fridge. Now, maybe I think she sometimes misses it even when it's there, so I'm not going to completely throw out the belief, but my confidence will go down because I think she's generally reliable. So that would be a defeater for my belief. Or if I think it's snowing outside and I look outside and I don't see snow, that would be a defeater for my belief. Defeaters come in two kinds, and it's useful to keep them straight. There are undercutting defeaters, which remove your evidence for a belief, and there are rebutting defeaters, which don't remove your evidence for a belief, but just directly counter that belief. So suppose I believe a conclusion on the basis of an argument which has two premises. An undercutting defeater would say one of those premises is false. That removes my reason for that conclusion. It doesn't mean the conclusion is false. It just means the reasons I had don't lead to that conclusion. They're not good enough to get me there. A rebutting defeater might leave my argument intact and say, yeah, I don't know, your two premises are fine, the inference is fine, the conclusion looks true, but here's an argument that goes in the opposite direction, that goes directly against your conclusion. So a rebutting defeater argues that your conclusion is false without undercutting your reasons for your belief in the first place. It's a useful distinction to keep track of because often when you're thinking things through, or if you're in an argument with somebody else, but really we can just focus on you thinking things through, it's useful to notice whether you're changing your mind because you've lost the evidence that you thought you had, like that evidence no longer supports what you thought it did, or instead you're changing your mind despite the fact that that evidence still supports your conclusion because you find some an argument for a competing conclusion to be stronger. Next up is a distinction between having justification and being justified. You have justification if you have good reason to form a belief, and you are justified if you form a belief on the basis of a good reason to form a belief. Now, this distinction is subtle, so let me just give an example. Suppose that I have every reason in the world to believe that my son is in the next room. I can hear him yelling, I can hear the music playing, I hear his feet stamping, and so on and so forth. But I just decide to ignore that evidence because I'm a very anxious kind of person and worry that he must be outside in the freezing cold. Then I would have justification for believing he's in the next room, but I wouldn't be justified in believing it. And the reason I'm not justified in believing it is because in that case, I don't form the belief on the basis of that evidence. In fact, I don't form the belief at all. I form the opposite belief. Or suppose I have all those good reasons to believe he's there, but I don't believe he's there for those reasons. Instead, I believe he's there because I just can't stand the thought of him being freezing outside in the cold. Then I have justification for the belief, those good reasons, I can hear him and so on and so forth, but my belief isn't justified because it's formed on the basis of bad reasons. Being worried about him freezing is not a good reason to believe he's inside. By contrast, if I form the belief that he's in the next room because I hear him, then I have actually formed the belief on the basis of a good reason, so the belief is justified. I don't merely have justification, the belief is justified. Okay, and that's all I'm going to say about these useful epistemic notions.